What's going on, Junkie Nation? Gorgeous George and Goes are back with Julie Kedzie from Invicta FC 45, former professional fighter, one of the OGs of the sport, now calling the fights for Invicta, and of course Invicta FC 45 on MMA Junkie next Wednesday, January 12th, 8 p.m. Eastern start time. A lot of fights headed your way, including a title fight. How are you, Julie?
I am doing well. I'm keep adjusting my camera. Everybody knows how vain I am anyway, so I think Vain Kedzie is a good nickname, but I'm adjusting the camera. I'm all over the place. Just came off of a hard day of work, and I have to say I am looking forward to next week and fight week so much. Whenever there's an Invicta, it's like it feels like I'm fighting again in some ways. The excitement around it and the fun and the drama. It's so cool.
Well, y'all are kicking off the year 2022 because, you know, like I said, you'll be the fight cards next Wednesday. The UFC follows with their show on Saturday, and then Bellator kicks in gear, you know, later that month. But yeah, so a lot of fans have enjoyed the break, I guess, in a way, the holidays, the time off. But yeah, I'm getting the juices flowing as well. I already feel like it's fight week.
Oh yeah, I do too. I mean, that's the excitement in the air, you know, and just like watching the fighters' social media and how they're getting ramped up and excited and grumpy with each other and all this stuff. It's great. You know, it's funny. I know that people, because there has definitely been a saturation of fighting over the past couple of years. But I think what's really incredible about Invicta is that because it's so special, because it's so niche, and I don't know, special is not even the right word for it. It's just such an incredible platform, and that I think it transcends any fatigue anybody would get about fight saturation. I think people long for Invictas, and I'm going to keep that. That's a hill I'll die on. Like Invicta, it's always going to deliver. It's that special. It's that great.
Your social media team does a great job of reminding everybody about the history of Invicta, all the fighters that they've produced. So shout out to the social media team, you know, knowing about Rose Namajunas, knowing about Tisha Torres, knowing about so many fighters that have graced Invicta one way or another and helped, you know, springboard into other promotions. So shout out to them. And I did want to ask you, what about the carryover for women's MMA from the Juliana Pena Amanda Nunes fight? What were your thoughts on that fight real quick? And what do you think some of the young ladies that are going to be fighting next Wednesday, will they be feeling some of that? Just knowing that, you know, nobody's untouchable in the sport.
Oh, of course they're going to be feeling that. And you know what's fantastic about the Pena Nunes fight is, first of all, I love Amanda. I have loved Amanda forever. She was supposed to be my debut fight in Strikeforce, and I think I dodged a bullet that I didn't have the fight because I'm pretty sure she would have knocked me out flat. But I've always loved her. She is somebody who carries herself with just grace and personality, and she's so funny. And I met Pena way before she was ever in the UFC. I met her actually at a UFC fight. We were watching it together, and she just seemed like, I know she has just this huge personality, but she's a delightful human being in a lot of ways. I disagree with so many things that so many fighters say all the time, but I have to say, on an individual level, you know, when you meet these people and you get to know them, you see them, just they're really incredible. And so, you know, my heart was broken for Nunes, but you know, we also have to remember she's still a UFC champion right now, right? I mean, She still holds that featherweight belt. So people are like, oh no, she lost everything. No, she was the double champ. She's still a champion. Let's not forget that. Let's not erase her legacy there. But in losing the 135-pound belt to Juliana Pena, you know, it's heartbreaking, but it's also, what a triumph for Pena. What an incredible thing to come back from so many injuries and from having a child and from just, you know, she had so many setbacks in her career, and just to become the UFC champ, that's an incredible story. And I was, as much as I felt closer to Amanda and love Amanda so much, having met Juliana and having seen her fight, she's so mean and she finds a way to win in incredible ways. And I love that about her. I love watching her fight. And I was really happy for her victory. You know, and also I was happy for the fact that because I'm outside of the fight world, the narratives that happen there, the stories become so exciting to me, and I get to concentrate on that. And those stories, even though when you're a fighter, you're only supposed to think about your own career and what I'm only going to deal with what's in front of me right now. But, you know, you tell yourself whatever you have to tell yourself in order to concentrate on the fight in front of you. But of course, her victory is firing up our fighters. Of course, there's something about that that's going to make them think anything can happen because, you know, the odds makers had a pretty, you know, they had Pena by a very long shot winning that fight. So every fight, well, I shouldn't say every fight. There's fights that happen that people don't notice, but I would say every female fight still has an impact on the division and on the fighters within it. And so I can guarantee that the fighters who are fighting on this Invicta card watched that championship fight and it did something for them mentally or emotionally. And, you know, I have to thank Nunes and Pena for that, for firing them up, because I think it all has this ripple effect into what happens in the next fight. And because I'm retired, I get to sit back and I get to watch it and I get to just revel in the victories and feel sad in the losses, but also just enjoy it from a much broader perspective.
No doubt. And, you know, you mentioned Amanda's still a champion. And yes, folks, she's still a champion at featherweight. And I'm going to use that as my pivot for one of the fights I want to discuss with you, Julie. Courtney King versus Ramona Pasquel. Now, the last time Courtney King fought, she fought Kayla Harrison. She went a round and a half. She succumbed to Kayla Harrison. But I wanted to ask you, what do you think that does for a fighter in a way? Because you learn from your losses, but also when you're fighting against one of the best, in a way, even though you lose, it's got to up your confidence and you're going to be even that much better the next time around.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that fight did a lot of things for me on an emotional level. I was extremely proud of Courtney King in that fight. Harrison dismantled her. Harrison smeared the canvas with Courtney's blood in a way that I found incredibly stirring and incredibly, I know we're not supposed to talk about violence and blood and blah, 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 blah. But I mean, women bleed, men bleed, fighters bleed. And if we ignore that, then we're ignoring a component of the game that's really important. And I think the fact that King fought through so much adversity in that, I think there's a point in a fight when you know you're being outclassed. And I don't say that pejoratively for King. There's a point, you're being controlled, but she still kept coming. She still kept coming. And let me tell you something. As a fighter who lost every television fight I ever had and still wanted to keep coming, I have a tremendous amount of respect for somebody who has that spirit and that fight spirit and who can, smile through it and keep going. So as much as people will probably want to write her off, and I know they've said derogatory things about her because they want to say derogatory things about Kayla's opponents because, let's face it, her stock is at an all-time high. And so, promoters are going to do whatever they can to push that down and try to get her for less money, particular promoters. And so what I would say is King should take that fight and she should feel very proud of herself for not quitting. And she should feel very proud of herself that she had the opportunity to face somebody who was an Olympic gold medalist. And she survived. It sounds like I'm being insulting, and that's not what I mean. It's not surviving so much as it's persevering. And she persevered through so much adversity in that fight. She did lose. And I think that affects you as well. But you rebound from losses and you grow from the moments you recognize that you persevered through adversity. And so I don't know. I'm excited to see King back in the cage. I really am.
Yeah.
She's, Pasquel. She's a little bit of a dark horse, I've seen some of her fights. She's got an interesting record, but it's to see her debut in Invicta. I always love a new fighter coming in. My notes say that she's training at Syndicate, and that's a solid ass gym to be training at. But I know, overseas, she's had a whole bunch of, success. And so I don't know, I'm excited. I'm excited to see what happens. I think it's a fight that could end up being a barn burner.
For sure. That's your featured bout next Wednesday at Invicta FC 45. Let's move to the co-main event, Monica Franco versus Haley Cowan. Now we're back at the bantamweight division, a division that you graced for many years, Julie Kedzie. Talk to us about Franco versus Cowan. Are the women Hawaiian fighters, do they kind of carry that reputation? You know, a couple times I went to Hawaii, my buddies told me, don't mess with the Hawaiians. You know, what's the fighting spirit for the ladies that come from Hawaii that you've
Well, I can't make a generalization about an entire group of people, but I will say that the Hawaiian fighters that I have experienced fighting in Invicta, or not I experienced, but the fighters from Hawaii who I've seen fight in Invicta have always impressed me. Win or lose, they have always impressed me. And there is a fighting spirit there. There is something in I hesitate to say it's cultural, but I think it probably is cultural. This just unwillingness to quit, unwillingness to back down. And Monica Franco, you know, she doesn't have a lot of pro fights to her name, but she's a tough cookie. She's a real tough cookie. You know, and she's also one of these people where the fact that she's getting in the cage now, she had a setback. She was supposed to fight for Invicta earlier, and she had a health setback. I mean, COVID is no freaking joke. And so it's exciting to me on many levels just to see her in the cage, to see her healthy, to hear about, kind of her training camp. And I can't wait to speak to her more about that. And she is fighting Haley Cowan. And Haley Cowan is, again, this is going to be an Invicta debut. She's coming over from LFA. Actually, this is, technically, I guess it's Franco's she was supposed to fight for us. She was supposed to fight for us 2 times. So this will be her second fight with us. But for Haley Cowan, first fight with us, Invicta debut. But she has fought some Invicta veterans before, like Sarah Click and Brittany Cloudy, and she's a tough cookie. So, it's hard for me to say insulting, incisive things about people at this point, because every prediction I ever make is wrong, and it always makes me so happy that every prediction that I make is wrong, because I love being proved wrong. I love when people rise to the occasion and just absolutely throw down and surprise me, because that to me is the essence of MMA, right? Just seeing people defy your expectations. So I'm real excited. I wanted to see Franco back in that other fight. I was excited about that match. I'm excited to see her fight with Cowan. And I understand that Cowan actually requested this bout against Franco. So maybe Cowan's seeing something in Franco that she wants to exploit, but Franco was more than happy to take it. So that I also find, maybe she was watching Cowan's footage saying, okay, yeah, this is going to be a good one for me.
Julie, when you look up and down the card, you'll see a lot of American flags, but there are a lot of other countries that are being represented on this card. And I know fighters, they're fighting, they want to get paid, they want to move on, eventually win a belt. But is there a little piece of them, do you think, that nationalistic pride does play in these fights? Or is that something that just maybe us as fans on the outside only think about?
It might be. That's a really good question. And that's a question that could get me in a lot of trouble for my political beliefs. So you want to get me giving you some sound bites here. But yeah, of course there's going to be nationalistic pride. When you are the only fighter from one country fighting in another country, and you feel the weight of maybe representation on your back. And that can either really motivate you, or that can be intimidating for you, that can hold you back. And so, yeah, we see a lot of USA flags, but we do see flags from, Brazil. and I don't want to make generalizations, because I don't want to get myself in trouble and get you guys censored or whatever. But I would say, I think it does factor heavily. The international flavor of this card is going to be, it'll be a factor for sure. I think definitely in the title fight.
I want to talk to you a little bit about open scoring. this is something that has been talked about for the longest time. And in our heads, I think we've always played out how it would all work out. If this were around when you were fighting, what kind of changes would you have to do to your training? Like, would you almost want your coach to tell you what they thought of each round as you're training? Like, because it just seems like there's so much that can happen just knowing that score, so many changes in tactics. What's your take on it so far? How do you like it?
I really like open scoring. And one of the things that I really like about it is that it is up to kind of the coach and the fighter decide whether or not they're going to communicate what the score is. Because I think for some fighters, they just don't want to know. And for other fighters, they do want to know. They need to know, maybe I'm down on the cards, or, okay, I did all right, so what I'm doing is working. Because sometimes you're doing something in a fight that you think is working really, really well, and it's not. And other times you think something you're not doing or something you're doing is not working, but you don't understand that, like, okay, I'm doing leg kicks, nothing's happening, I'm doing leg kicks, I got to kick her in the head. But it turns out those leg kicks, your coach or the judges maybe actually, well, judges don't always score leg kicks well, but they should. You know what I mean? But there's factors to fighting, there's elements and layers to it that I think open scoring really helps illuminate. When I was fighting, I like to say that I would not have wanted to know what the score was, but I don't know. Hindsight is whatever the fuck hindsight is. Oh God, I always drop F-bombs with you guys. I'm sorry. It's hard to know because now I get to see MMA from a much more theoretical, much broader view. And it's a really beautiful way to see it. And I don't have to worry about myself all the time. And I think when I was fighting, I may have been a bit of a head case, but I also kind of think I convinced myself, or other people convinced me, that I was a head case because I really did love to fight. And so it may have actually aided my fight career to have open scoring. From my point of view, and I guess the point that I'm trying to get here is that because in Kansas, the commission says, we're going to tell your coach what the score is. It's up to them whether or not they tell the fighter. Then it's the relationship between the fighter and the coach. I don't, they're going to say whatever they're going to say. And if a coach feels like they have to lie to a fighter, maybe they know their psychology, or maybe they don't trust their fighter. If a coach feels like they have to be completely honest with that fighter, maybe they know their psychology, or maybe they know that that fighter doesn't trust them. I don't know. There's a lot of layers I'm talking about here. And I do apologize. They haven't filled my ADHD meds in a while. We're at a shortage here. So if I'm all over the place, big apologies.
No worries. Everything's going good. Okay. In fact, if you allow me to jump in, in this title fight, I want to get to the title fight here, which is the main event at Invicta FC 45, 8 p.m. Eastern. Tune in next Wednesday, January 12th on MMA Junkie. We're excited to have Invicta. And I wanted to ask you, Julie, the last one went to a split decision. So I think it would be wise for that communication to be there, because this is going to be Del Boni's second attempt to wrest the title from Zappitella. And, if you go 0-2 sometimes in a promotion, it's really hard to get another shot, another whiff at the title. So I think every single bit of information you can have will be important. But let's break down this title fight. They've done it. They've danced before. And Zappitella has not fought since then. However, boy, has Del Boni been busy in combat sports, because she's been either grappling or part of a one-night tournament. So she's had a lot of competition since then.
Yeah, she also took a pro kickboxing fight. Like Del Boni's been busy. I'm sorry I cut you off, but I am so excited for this fight in so many ways. The first time around, like, Alicia Zappitella continually blows my mind with her approach and her evolution, because you see her and her nickname is Half Pint, and she comes in there and she just this little tank girl, and just the utter belief she has in herself it's extraordinary. It's a little bit like, it's like Diego Sanchez, but without the crazy, if that makes any sense. Like, Diego Sanchez, just so much belief, like, having trained with him, so much belief, the screaming yes, everything like that. She has so much belief, and that belief has been the core. And it's not, I'm in no way dissing her skill set. the woman is an incredible wrestler, and her striking has improved by dividends. I mean, she's really put some stuff together striking wise over the course of her Invicta career that I've been seriously impressed with. But it's just like, I don't know, watching her fight is like, it's drama unfolding, and it's just so cool to watch that. You know, even though I know that, you know, you're not supposed to be emotional when you're a fighter. You're not supposed to talk about fighters' emotions and stuff like that. And especially because somehow it'll seem diminutive to talk about women having emotions when they fight. But you do see emotion in her, in something about the way she carries herself and the way she executes punches. You know, she's like, rah! And as opposed to that, Del Boni has this, it's not austerity exactly, but she has this composure about her that where, you know, and again, I'm not insulting her fighting. I'm actually feel like this is incredible. She'll see the work that she's done after she's done it. You know, she'll consider it. She'll bop, 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 or, you know, something, and she'll consider it. And that waiting moment is actually the moment where she gets into the most trouble. And it's not exactly a waiting moment. It's a waiting like millisecond. But that's where, you know, the overhands or whatever can catch her. But she's also so technical and so good at counter fighting. And Zappitella is getting so good at her timing that it's just like, I get giddy thinking about these two. I feel like they're polar opposites. And I mean, they may be just tiny in stature, but I feel like they are like the biggest champions I've ever seen in so many ways. Like, and what I'm, you know, I talk about emotion with with Zappitella. And you know, because you see she explodes, she cries and she yells, you know, with that victory, and it's exciting to see. And then Del Boni was so crushed by that split decision loss, which, I mean, if you go back to the commentary, I was surprised by the decision. I thought it was so close, and I thought Del Boni edged it out. And I'm sure Alicia Zappitella hates me for that, and she's absolutely allowed to. But then I rewatched it and I talked to the commission about it, and I saw their point. Like I really did. I did a lot of work trying to, you know, get to the heart of it, and I saw how they scored it. And then Del Boni was just so crushed by that, and I think she was ready to retire. And instead, she comes back and wins a one-night tournament in beautiful fashion. I mean, that last fight, that fight with Van Zandt, that was storybook stuff. That if you guys have not seen Del Boni versus Lindsey Van Zandt, please watch that fight. Like both of their stocks went up in that. Like Lindsey Van Zandt looked incredible in that fight. Del Boni looked incredible in that fight. And then Del Boni continued to work, you know, taking on grappling tournaments, taking on a pro kickboxing. You're doing all of this stuff just with this kind of like this steel resolve to take this belt home. I mean, she said it from the beginning, you know, the first fight, they did that voting thing for that Phoenix tournament, and she rallied all of her friends in Brazil to vote for her to fight Tabitha Watkins the first round. Like she was just like, I want that fight. I want that fight. I want to beat her teammate first because I know she's really tough. And I know it's going to make an emotional and a psychological impact. I've got to beat her first. And, you know, and she did, and she continued to progress, and she won the whole tournament, and she earned her title shot, you know. And I honestly, I don't know if she would have had to do the tournament to get that rematch. I think that the rematch was justified just because the first fight was so close.
Right.
But the fact that she did it, I think, did something for her, if that makes any sense. Did something for her, like proving something or flipping a switch. And meanwhile, Alicia Zappitella, you know, we haven't seen her in action, but that girl trains like no other. Like that girl, she brings in people to train with. She goes out into the woods and meditates. She does. I mean, she is like, I don't know. Zappitella has been, I think, training this entire time. Even before that tournament started, getting ready for that. And I also think Zappitella has her eyes set on moving up to strawweight. And that's a whole other field of competition too. So, you know, with this fight, you know, if she wins this fight, if she, you know, keeps her titles, she has a possibility of being a champ. If she doesn't win this rematch, I have a feeling she's just going to go straight up to strawweight. And that's a tiny little strawweight. And in my mind, she's a smart woman. So I think she's probably training extra hard, knowing that she'll be the smallest one in the division if she goes to strawweight.
Can't wait to see the rematch versus Alicia Zapatella and Del Boni from Brazil. And like you guys were talking about, sorry, Jessica Del Boni, you guys were talking about that there is a lot of representation overseas, Hong Kong, Canada, Brazil, and Mexico also on the card. So almost every weight class is represented. We got a title fight. It's going to be a fun night of fights next Wednesday, Invicta FC 45. Super excited to have you on, as always, Julie Kedzie, here on MMA Junkie Radio. And, of course, MMA Junkie's excited to have Invicta FC on our website. We are jacked for next week's fights.
You guys, it's so cool. We're going to be working together. I'm excited for this. Oh, yay, Junkie.